Gettysburg Museum of History Studios. You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special episode of AG Today. It is, what is today's date? The 7th of February, and we have our friend Chris Gwinn with us. That is kind of a tongue twister of a name.
It is, yeah. So when you go with the one syllable for the first and last name,
let me try it.
They tend to blend
Christopher
together.
Gwinn.
Oh yeah,
that's easier. Okay,
thank you, man.
He's here as he tends to do a couple times a year when we can remember to do it. We've missed a couple seasons, but we want to give you a preview of what you can expect from the Park Service with interpretive programming this spring of 2024. And Chris, thank you for coming back in and doing this.
As always, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation to talk about this. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Now, Christopher, let's start with the thing that's on everybody's mind. Even though the park has put word out, we're going to ask you again, because I'm sure it's going to be in the comment section or it's going to be in the phone calls if anybody calls in. By the way, if you want to call in, 717-420-1978 is the phone number. Call in, ask Chris any question that you want. Well, not any question, within reason. What is the deal with Little Round Top? When is it going to open? Do we have a date yet? What's the story? Go.
So we're eyeing late spring, early summer.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's, a lot of the work that they're doing up there, one, it's handwork, and it's very weather dependent, right? And so, you can't pour concrete when it's raining. You can't lay asphalt when the atmospheric conditions aren't right. So a lot of it is weather dependent. But for those folks who've been, waiting for Little Round Top to reopen, it's been almost 2 years. Like, the end is in sight. So you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're approaching the finish line. And, it's a project that has to be done right. It has to be done correctly. And it's going to take as long as it's going to take. But again, we are eyeing that late spring, early summer deadline. We're actively planning for the reopening.
It is kind of hard to believe, though, that it's been 2 years.
It's been almost 2 years.
Yeah, it's like a year and a half.
Almost 2 years.
It's over a year and a half, isn't it?
Over a year and a half, yes.
Yeah.
We closed, I want to say, late July 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So
that
shy of 2 years when hopefully we reopen.
That really did go fast.
Man, when you think about the amount of work that was involved from the contractors, from the archaeological perspective, you name it. It's a tremendous undertaking. And, the sensitivity of the landscape, all those things, they factor into it.
Yeah, and it's, of course, I understand, a lot of people, there's some people, who only come here to go up there, I found.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprises me, actually. But so those people will be coming back. I think it's going to be, what do you think? I think people are going to really like it. I think.
You're never going to please everybody.
Of course not.
You need to go into anything like this with that mindset, especially Gettysburg. And Gettysburg is a very unique ecosystem. And for someone who works in the Park Service or in my position, it's a really wonderful place to work because you have so many people who are so invested in the park and the place. And that's, I've worked at parks where that doesn't exist, right? Where it's really difficult to get a kind of community and to build this sense of stewardship up amongst the people that might come to the park. And Gettysburg doesn't have that. And if anything, it's the opposite of that, where you have so many people who love this place so deeply, who care about it so much that they're going to be engaged with this process, and that's it's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, again, not everybody is going to be happy all the time. But from the Park Service perspective, we do the best we can to one, preserve, protect, to be very sensitive to the landscape that we're working on. Little Round Top is a singular place. There's only one. You can't mess it up, right? You cannot mess it up.
No, you don't want to mess it up.
At the same time, it's going to be a different parking configuration than visitors are used to. I've seen a lot of the kind of the Facebook chatter about some of the elements on the hill, and I think from a certain perspective, there's a group of folks that they have this conception that after the battle ended, on July 5th, 1863, this little bubble came down from the heavens and was placed over Little Round Top, and it's been
preserved,
untouched, for 160 years. the reality is that that hill has been in a constant state of evolution since July 2nd, 1863, and even before. So it's not a static landscape.
Right.
It's been constantly evolving.
You can see, if you look at pictures taken after the battle of it, if you look closely, you can see that the topography of the top of the hill is not the same as what it is today. And I guess, did we not know that the 44th New York was on fill?
Well, we didn't know until we started to do archaeological work on it.
That's true. So we didn't know going into that it was on fill.
No, well, certainly I didn't know.
Okay.
I mean, maybe somewhere somebody knew, but certainly the contractors didn't know. The park staff didn't know. It makes sense. I mean, you're building this castle on top of the hill, right?
Right.
And so there was what we call this void underneath the monument that had to be corrected, because again, it's just built on fill.
Right.
And our archaeological team went in and they actually they uncovered what they think, I'm going to butcher the term, but they call it the horizon level. So it's basically the 1863 topography that was underneath all that fill. And they found battle-related artifacts down there, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But so the hill's been messed with quite a bit, right? So you have the GBMA, they're going to restack a lot of those defensive works. You have the War Department that comes in 1895, and then just before they're going to build a lot of the avenues. There's a tremendous amount of development that takes place, especially on the southern face of the hill and on the eastern slopes of the hill. Everything from, a relic shop to there's a merry-go-round, or a carousel, and the Round Top Park Pavilion. And the National Park Service comes in, especially in the 1950s, reconfigures the War Department alignment of Sykes Avenue. They basically blast out the side and create the parking lot that everybody remembers. And you can go in on some of the rocks. You can you can see where they bore through the granite of the.
You talking about up top?
Up top, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Park Service did that,
right?
And so the hill has been through a lot of stages and evolution, and
and that path that we walk on up there was once drivable. You could take your little Model T up there, couldn't you?
The avenue was literally on top of the crest of the hill, right? So you're driving right past the 44th New York. And so
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah. And so when visitors, again, on social media or elsewhere comment about how, that we're modifying the hill and, blah, 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 blah. I think that comes from a lack of understanding of how much the hill has gone through in 160 years.
Yeah.
Again, a constant, unending state of change and evolution that has occurred there. And so you need to take that so for example, we're building bus parking on the summit where the parking area currently is.
Right.
There's a retaining wall that's there to help accommodate that. And, it's obviously something that's going to be new when visitors see it. It serves a purpose. It's certainly not an 1863 feature, but that's hardly the first iteration of change that has happened to the hill since 1863.
I think a lot of people focus on the battle history primarily or solely, and they don't take into account park history. I mean, I got to admit that before I started doing the show, I never even considered park history. And if you had, brought it up to me prior to addressing Gettysburg, I would have been like, I don't really care about that. Yeah. But now, I find it more and more interesting. And it was funny. It was on a battle walk with Troy Harmon out by the copse of trees, and he pointed out Webb Avenue, the old road base.
Still see the grass is a different color. Yeah, if you ever go on Google Earth, you can go and see all these avenues that are once in the park.
Exactly, and then that was the moment that kind of made my brain tingle, and I suddenly became obsessed with old park roads that are no longer there, but right under your nose.
It's there.
It's right there, and I've always noticed the different color grass, but I never put two and two together. So, go ahead.
To go back to Little Round Top, so a lot of the trail alignments that'll be up on the hill, they're on top of old avenue alignments. So we're using basically circulation systems that existed in the 1890s, but now we're reutilizing that same disturbed area for some of the paths that'll be up there. And then I want to get back to your point about the battle.
Yeah.
Right, about the battle. One of the core aspects of this project, as far as my shop is concerned, is doing a better job of guiding visitors through the story of the battle on the hill so that visitors will understand how to explore Little Round Top. Now, that's not going to apply to most of your listeners who are well-versed in the battle. They know the story, but increasingly, we're getting a lot of visitors who will go to Little Round Top, and they might admire the beautiful view and the sweeping vistas of the battlefield, but they really don't understand how the battle itself unfolded. So a lot of the trail systems now are going to take you to where a lot of the battle action occurred. So, for example, there's a trail that'll take you down past the Vincent Wounding Marker to the 16th Michigan, and then all the way down the slope to really Devil's Den. So when you hike that from the Den up the hill, you're really following the route of the 4th Texas, Assault on Little Round Top. So that's an experience that had been a kind of a social trail, but we had never really formalized it. So there'd be experiences like that you can have. We're working diligently right now on the interpretive signage that'll be up on the hill. And again, the intent is we're going to use these interpretive panels to do a better job of telling you the story of the battle from the moment the signal station arrives on the hill, and of course Warren goes up the slopes to the charge of the 20th Maine.
I think overall, the vast majority of people will appreciate the changes because they're not. It's not completely different.
Oh no!
I mean, it's still, you can still walk it the way you used to, except now you won't twist your ankle going down to the 83rd Pennsylvania.
If anything, you'll have a much better. Hopefully, you have a much better time, right? Because there's a trail going down to the 83rd Pennsylvania.
Right.
There's for example a trail to the Michigan Sharpshooters Monument, which was all but inaccessible before.
Never been down there until Steve Sims took me there.
Super awesome.
Well, right, and so I think that's the thing, that it just shores up things that people kind of created on their own, but it makes it more accessible for people who might not be so sturdy on their feet and they can't go off rough ground. These trails are different, and I think the top of the hill, of course, that's where most people are going to go.
Sure.
You know, when I was up there in October, I was trying to remember what it looked like before all the work. Yeah. So, you know, I've already forgotten basically what it used to look like up there.
Well, I think that's a good thing because especially that core interpretive area, which is, you know, basically we're defining it as everything from Warren down to the 44th New York. There was a lot of parkitecture, for lack of a better word. So park created architecture and infrastructure that really dates from the 1950s. So that little, I don't know if called a paddock or a little, that pavilion, that little, it was right by the 91st Pennsylvania. We had some interpretive signage, retaining wall stone. So that, we took all that out, and what we left was that 1863 topography below, including this giant boulder that's about the size of this room.
Right.
That you can see in early Tipton photos and early postcards, and you know, we had just assumed that it had been blasted away and gone, but it was still there underneath. It was still underneath this, 1950s, Mission 66 era Park Service, infrastructure.
Right.
And so we're actually, with this project, we've revealed some of that 1863 layer that had previously been hidden. And, with the trails and with the desire for when people go to Little Round Top at a fundamental level, I think that they're looking to connect with something that's real, right? Because you can read about Little Round Top in a book. You can read, the Killer Angels or Joshua Chamberlain's, Through Blood and Fire at Gettysburg, or the accounts of the other men that fought there. And it's very I won't say it's cerebral, but it's not the real thing. But when you go to Little Round Top and you see the same rocks and you can walk the same terrain, it takes something that's an abstract and makes it something that's real. Mm-hmm. So, when you go to church, you want to pray in the chapel and not in the parking lot. People want they want to have that experience being on the hill. And I think what we've done ultimately with this project is hopefully made that better, certainly safer for you, the visitors, and also for the park, for the defensive works that were left behind by the soldiers, for the monuments, for the landscape itself. So that's my hope. And again, we're eyeing late spring, early summer for that.
And I think that the park has succeeded in that, and I think most people will agree with that. I hope so. I am interested to see how the traffic works there, though, because there are fewer places to park. I'm not going to say parking spaces, but there are fewer places to park, like on the north slope, for example, because of the curbing.
There's curbing,
right?
So there's more formal spaces.
Okay.
Parks. We haven't removed. There's when you would go to the hill previously, there's that parking area at the top of the hill. Mm-hmm. It will have, I think 4 handicap spots and a number of, I want to say 30 traditional vehicuclar spaces, and as well as bus parking on the right-hand side.
How many were there before?
Hey, don't ask me these questions. You call Jason Martz.
Okay.
He will tell you the number of spaces. He'll tell you, how the width between he'll just rattle this off.
Okay.
I think he's become more Little Round Top than man at this point. But what you're hitting at, there's less informal parking, right?
Yes.
So we used to be able to just kind of pull off the side of the road and get out. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
There's one lane, and the idea is to funnel traffic up to the formal parking at the top of the hill. Now, there's also the gravel parking lot at the intersection of Sedgwick and Wheatfield that we're talking about formalizing to a degree to make that not only overflow parking, but trailhead parking as well.
No restrooms down there, though.
There will be a porta-johns.
Porta-johns, but okay, but they're not putting it. I remember there was.
There was at one point in this project. It was it was grandiose. We're going to have a little restrooms and a little bus parking area,
right.
And vending machines and this, that, and the other thing. That's not happening. That's dead.
All right. So what else then? What can people expect? We're almost done. We're like halfway done with winter lecture season already.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. It goes so fast.
It does go. It went surprisingly fast this year. I don't know why. I guess, I don't know why.
I don't either. But it's been an enjoyable season so far. And it definitely makes the winter go by quicker, which this is why I always look forward to the winter lecture season, because it's something to do on Saturday and Sunday. And before you know it, there's another one.
Yeah. And, first off, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Your crew. You've done such a tremendous job of filming these for us, far beyond something anything that we could produce in park.
Thanks.
And so, I take great satisfaction in reading the comments on the YouTube videos commending your work and how expertly I'm sure you do how expertly you've done it, and I'm certainly very appreciative, because what that does at a very basic basic level is it creates something that is very ephemeral and gives it a shelf life. And I really value that. I really value the work that you've done.
Thanks, Chris.
I'd be loath to not plug a couple of upcoming lectures if you
sure, by all means.
So coming up this Saturday, we have a guy named Chris Davis. Now, Chris Davis is the supervisory biologist of the park.
Oh, yes.
So he's in charge of the flora and the fauna and the native and the non-native species that call Gettysburg home. And he's going to give a talk on the biology of the battlefield, which is a little bit different from what we normally offer. But if you got folks that are interested in learning about that aspect of the park, which intersects with the historical aspect quite a bit, I highly encourage you to go to Chris's talk. He's an exceptional guy, excellent speaker. And whether you're just interested in biology or you might be taking the licensed battlefield guide exam later in the year, this is great stuff for you to be exposed to. So,
okay.
Chris Davis. Coming up next week, the week after, we have Michelle Crowell is her name.
Oh, yes.
And she is in charge of the Civil War manuscript collection at the Library of Congress. So she's going to speak about Lincoln, what is left to learn from the archival record about Abraham Lincoln. And then the following day, which is a Sunday, which is February the 18th, Ranger Matt Atkinson is delivering his lecture on sickles and the New York Monument Commission. So that was one that had been rained out or snowed out.
Yep.
That we had to reschedule. Coming up later on, there is it's a performance from a woman who portrays Harriet Tubman, and it's more theatrical than what we've traditionally done. So when you go for this particular lecture, this woman inhabits Harriet Tubman. So you'll be basically watching a one woman show, which again is a little bit unique, not quite in keeping with what we've done in the past, but I think it's going to be fantastic. The following day is a Sunday, the 25th. We'll have Scott Hartwig, who's the author of, a number of books, but most recently, I Dread the Thought of the Place, The Battle of Antietam.
Yeah.
And I'll be basically, it'll be more of a Q&A conversation that I'll have with Mr. Hartwig about the process of writing the book, some of the things he's learned about the battle and the battlefield of Antietam. And again, the process of doing history, how you write a 900-page book. And so I'm very excited about that. And then the last lecture is on March the 2nd. That's me. I'll be talking about Camp Letterman. And
that should be interesting. Speaking of Camp Letterman, I had a neighbor where I used to live, and he was an interesting guy. And he one day came over, and he was all beside himself because they're putting whatever the hell they're putting up, their gas stations and shopping centers and apartments and stuff at Camp Letterman. He goes, I don't understand why the Park Service doesn't come in and take that, you know what I mean? Sure. And I said, well, they can't just come in and take that. I mean, it's a whole big thing.
That's frowned upon.
Yeah.
We tried that.
People don't like government just stealing land. Yeah. But For people who might have thought the same thing, can you explain to them just how difficult or near to impossible it might be in some cases for the park to go in and do that, even with the help of someone like the American Battlefield Trust? And like, how does that all work? Because I know people seem very confused, like with Pickett's Buffet, for example, like how that all works together.
Sure. The first thing I'll say is that I recognize that in any community, there are people that live here and they need things. They need restaurants to go. They need gas stations. They need grocery stores. They need, you name it. And so you can't at a basic level, you can't save everything.
Right.
So you need to be obviously strategic. And I'd love you're talking to the wrong guy. So I'd love it. I wish we could just save everything. Right.
Yeah.
And, that's not the reality. They're even in the earliest days of the park. And by earliest days, I mean as early as John Batchelor, who's writing in the 1870s and 1880s. There was a recognition that was a special place. Batchelor himself visits the hill and calls it this beautiful spot, and so there's that the recognition that was part of the Gettysburg story. With and there are actually, as early as the War Department, there are people writing. The John Page Nicholson, who's the chairman of the Battlefield Commission at that point in time, saying what can you do to save what they were calling Hospital Woods. And it ultimately, there's a War Department marker that's placed there, but there's no formal effort to ever save it. So the Park Service, we can't just go out and buy stuff, right? Buy land. That's just not really how we work. What happens is, Congress gives you a boundary, a congressional boundary, and they draw it on a map. And I'm simplifying this immensely. Yeah. But here's your boundary. Now that boundary, that doesn't mean that you actually own everything in it, but that's how big you can get. That's how much land you can buy.
In other words,
becomes available.
If after the park is started, what's the word I'm looking for? Not started, but you know what I mean. They have an expansion boundary. So if you're going to expand, this is as far out as you can go.
This is as far as you can go. So you're authorized to buy anything within that boundary.
You have to.
Now, if let's say there's a property that's really valuable, you got to have it. That takes an act of Congress for your boundary to be adjusted for you to be able to purchase that land and add it to the park.
Has the park ever done that, to your knowledge?
Absolutely. Okay. It's called a boundary adjustment. Okay. That is usually it's done for small parcels, right? Mm-hmm. Camp Letterman is not in our congressional boundary. It's not.
So the first thing you would have to do is A, have an interest in getting it, and then B, get Congress to extend your boundary.
In the case of that Letterman site, that would not happen.
No.
Not happen.
So now, let me ask you this.
Now with ABT, American Battlefield.
Okay, that's where I was going to
go. They preserve battlefield land, right? And does Camp Letterman, does that fall under that umbrella? And then the other thing is you got to look at the integrity of the site and visitor access and a whole host of other things.
And really, what? It's a field. Now you could say, well, the battlefield's a field, but we preserve that. Well, yeah, but there's monuments and stuff like that. But also, there's a story that unfolded on the field. Not that there's not a story that unfolds in hospitals.
Certainly not.
Obviously, there's doctors do. Yeah. Here's where the surgery was. Here's where whatever the case may be. But it's a little different though from a battlefield because it's not. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how, but it's people recovering and convalescing, and they're laying there theoretically, or at least that's the way the public would look at it.
So one of the things that I think that our country has failed at in a certain aspect, and by this I mean a century ago. There's this golden age of battlefield preservation that occurs really in the 1880s and 1890s, and this is when a lot of the grand national military parks are created. So Chickamauga and Vicksburg and Shiloh and Gettysburg, these grand military parks, and the emphasis was always on the battlefields, scenes of armed conflict, and collectively. For a great period of time, that's kind of how Americans remembered the American Civil Wars through battlefield parks. Right. Which, of course, is a hugely important aspect of the American Civil War. But there's a lot of other economic and political and social aspects of the war, too, that we we weren't as good at preserving land associated with that. So slave cabins and
right, all the ancillary things that go along with it,
right. And it's just now, within my lifetime, that especially the Park Service has taken an increased interest in preserving those sites, which is fantastic. So, for example, Fortress Monroe on the Virginia Peninsula is now a National Park Service site, arguably where contrabands come to be through the work of Benjamin Butler. Reconstruction National Historical Park down in South Carolina, and the list goes on and on and on. There's a whole Camp Nelson, where our good friend Steve Fahn works. There's all these parks that are now telling a much more complete story of the American Civil War. And also, battlefield parks, they tended to be, up until relatively recently, a place where the heroic story of combat was told, where we focused a lot on the military maneuvers and the tendency to shy away from the ugliness of war was kind of reinforced by the fact that we're preserving these battlefield parks only. It's arguably preserving a hospital site. It's a very different story, right? It's one of suffering. And, certainly a different kind of hero in the form of the medical staff and the nurses, but equally vital to understanding the Civil War in its full dimension and holistically. I wish if I had a time machine, I would go back in time and I would tell John Batchelder and John Page Nicholson and William Robbins and all these folks that are fundamental to the creation of this battlefield park that sites like Camp Letterman should be preserved in full. Yeah. And I think obviously there's recognition that place is significant, but I think at the same time, they're assuming these places are always going to be agricultural. They're always going to be rural. Right. They'll put the War Department tablet up. And they did that at the 2nd Corps and the 5th Corps Field Hospital. You can drive down Hospital Road, you'll see those. Oh, yeah. Now, the areas around there are still relatively rural. They haven't been developed, unlike, the 30 heading out east from town. Which
they never could have foreseen Walmarts and Giants and gas stations.
No, probably not. You go to a park like Antietam, in the past 30 years, Antietam has almost doubled in size. Yeah. When that park is being laid out, the federal government really only owned enough space to put an avenue down. Because the presumption was it's always going to be agricultural. But the reality is that's not the case. So now they're buying up land and what have you. But Letterman's it's a tremendous story.
It is, and I always thought that Letterman, at least a portion of it, should be preserved to honor the man it's named after and his contributions to the way. Sure. I mean, we still use triage today, and his whole system the world uses it.
His system for dealing, for evacuating the wounded, for getting them treatment is still basically. So if you're wounded in Afghanistan or Iraq today, the basic process of taking you from the battlefield to a medical facility is essentially the same as what he created during the American Civil War. And there's this wonderful quote from a man named Paul Hawley, who was in charge of the medical operations for the Allied forces at Operation Torch in North Africa and then in Normandy, who basically saying he thanked God every day for Jonathan Letterman during the Second World War, because that was the same process they were using then to deal with the wounded, be it at the Battle of the Bulge or Monte Cassino or elsewhere.
Which and I know you got other things you want to talk about, and we'll get to them real quick. But, it's funny. This is something I've noticed a lot of conversations that I'm hearing. And by the way, if you're waiting in the phone queue, just keep waiting. We'll get to you when Chris is done.
I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
Don't worry, we'll get to you.
Just rambling.
717-420-1978 is the number if you want to get in the queue. In this day and age where you hear a lot of talk about or concern about people taking statues down, I hear a lot of people saying, we should put up a statue to X. And but it's more like the park should put up a statue to X, right? And then I'll be like, wow, they're not going to do that. But
it's not my job to do that,
right? It's not
not my job to do that.
But is there a moratorium on statues or monuments and things like that in the park? So no more. It's done.
So there's a document that stems from 2006, Management Policies in the National Park Service. And in that document, it defines and enunciates a moratorium on monuments at Civil War battlefield parks, with the exception of those that may not have been able to be recognized or commemorated for whatever reason in the past. And what we're really saying is, for example, USCT units or the African American contribution or the enslaved. Of course, that's a policy. It's not a law, it's a policy.
Right.
These things are legislated. So if Congress decides, or the American people rather, decide through their duly elected representatives that they want a monument to X or a memorial to Y, and Congress passes it, it becomes law. The Park Service then
can do it.
Well, we work with the folks, I mean, I'm not going to be out there chiseling something, right? Ideally, they create a commission of some sort, and similar to how, the Eisenhower Memorial on the National Mall was created. They create a commission. The commission accepts submissions, and one's decided upon, and then there's funding involved, and ultimately it's placed.
So, like a lot of other things, there's a lot of rigmarole to go through to get it to happen.
And it should be difficult.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But it's not impossible. It can happen. You just got to really be dedicated to whatever you think there should be a monument to.
It needs to be done in Congress.
Yeah. Okay.
You need to go through your representatives.
All right, Chris, what else have you got to dazzle us with?
I got a couple things. So one, this Saturday, actually, from 9 to 11, we're hosting something called Sensory Friendly Morning in the Museum and Visitor Center. And I'm very grateful to our partners, the Gettysburg Foundation, for making this event free. So if you go between 9 and 11, you can visit the museum galleries for free. You can see the cyclorama for free. We're going to have the lights up in the cyclorama so you can see the whole canvas all at once. The audio and sound in the lobby and in the cyclorama and in the galleries will be turned down or be turned off. And the intent being to make this an opportunity for anyone with sensory sensitivities, be it auditory, be it whatever, visual, yeah, anyone with sensitivities, to have a more relaxed, a quieter morning where they can take it in. Or if you just like museums that are quiet and a little bit more relaxed, because the cyclorama show, the audiovisual show, is meant by design to be very immersive, and so there's sound effects that are 360 degrees, and we found, especially with folks with PTSD, it can be overwhelming. Sure. Or folks or young people on the autism spectrum, and so this is an attempt by us to make sure that they can have a positive experience when they come and they visit the park. And again, it's free. It's open to the public for anybody who wants to show up and attend, and again, take your time through the museum galleries in a bit more of a relaxed manner.
This is the second year in a row you've done that?
This is the second year, and this is the third time we've offered it. And each time we've done it, we've had over 100 people come in for this between 9 and 11. So we're only talking about 2 hours.
That's pretty good.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it. And there's actually, we're going to be featured in what's called National Parks Traveler magazine. I hope I'm getting that right. They've done a wonderful write-up on it for us. And I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased with the public reaction to it and how many people we see coming through the door that maybe in another scenario would not have decided to go to Gettysburg.
The public reaction that I've heard about it has been very positive. People really like it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
I haven't checked it out because I don't have any of those issues, and I don't want to take up.
You're too busy getting ready to film for me.
That's right. It's right before
setting up. I mean, that's right. You're otherwise engaged.
Well, last year I wasn't, but But I mean, I figure I've been through it before, and I don't need to. Sure. But I am kind of interested to see what it would be like without sounds and lights and.
During
maybe I'll come a little early.
During COVID, when you go into our museum galleries in particular, it's very loud. There's a lot of sound bleed.
Yes.
And it can be a lot. There was a time mid-COVID where to kind of force people to spread out, we shut the movies down. So you couldn't just stand there and watch the movie. You keep it kind of moving. I loved it because it was much... I could talk to people. I could talk to people in the galleries. It was easier to be heard. And again, we didn't invent this concept. We stole it, to be honest, from other museums. But we applied it to
At least you're doing it.
And we've been very pleased with how it's been received.
I have to say, the way I have old man hearing, so like if I'm watching one of those videos, I actually hear the audio from the one on the other side of the wall.
Absolutely, yeah.
You the same way?
There's a point in the galleries where you can hear all three videos at once. So you're hearing day 1, day 2, day 3. At the same time. Yeah.
But what's interesting is that's Scott Hartwig.
I'm exaggerating, but only slightly.
But it's Scott Hartwig narrating.
Yes, he is. He narrates throughout. Yeah.
Any other famous Park Service people that people might want to listen for in that gallery when we hear voices?
There's a couple of. So you go. We call it an interactive where you can select voices of secession.
Sure.
What are people saying in 1860, 1861? Now, I know one of those voices is a man by the name of John Heiser, who was a former historian.
Yep.
I believe there's a former ranger named Chuck Teague.
We know him as well.
He's featured there. In the Soldier Life Gallery, you can do a little bugle call, interactive. And you probably don't know this name, but he was the chief ranger here for a long time. His name's Brian Fitzgerald. You can hear.
I know him.
You can hear his voice.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, because he was working here at the time that it was all being put together with Scott, so that makes sense.
That's right.
When I opened Getty's Bike Tours, Brian was the guy I went when I got the permit.
Oh yeah,
he was the guy that I went into, and he laid down the law for me. He's like, "All right, listen, here are the rules."
Like Ranger Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I really liked him.
He was that whole crew: John Heiser, Scott Hartwig.
Yeah.
Brian Fitzgerald, they left this park a much better place than they found it.
Well, and you learned under Scott, right?
Yeah.
And it shows too, by the way. It shows.
Very kind of you to say that.
What else?
Okay, so we have a lot. I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
Well, you're the one who's pressed for time.
I know. I'll move through this quickly. So Living History will resume beginning in May. And so we have a host of different living history organizations that we've worked with. We welcome into the park. They provide encampments, firing demonstrations, and it's Matt Atkinson's heading up that program for us now, and he's, I think, not quite every weekend, but almost every weekend between May and October. You'll see that in the park. That kicks off in the beginning of May. May 11th, it's a Saturday. We're going to do a program we called Open Doors in the park.
I love that.
Allow access into select park buildings. So we've committed to doing that. We didn't do it last year. And actually, the previous years, because of COVID, we didn't do it. But so many people reached out to us saying, "Hey, are you going to do Open Doors again?" That I don't think we realized that it made that big of an impression on the visitors. So I'm not going to say what buildings yet because we're still working on that. But we will be doing Open Doors again.
That's great.
May 11th, which is a Saturday, in conjunction with Historic Preservation Month.
I did it, I guess it was 2019 the last time you did it?
I think probably.
Yeah, I think that's when I went through it. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I don't remember it being done when I lived here between 05 and 10.
No, we created that.
You created
program,
that, okay. I think it's a great program. And, I remember going in the McPherson barn, it was an empty barn. There was nothing in there. But it was so cool to go into the McPherson barn,
yeah, but
right?
You're inside the barn.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is because I know there's other people out there like me in this regard, and it's just something seemingly small like that, getting to walk through the threshold of doors that are normally closed. Yeah. It does something that maybe I still don't know why I think it's so cool. Like, I can't explain it. It's just a cool.
I think that gets back to what we were talking about at Little Round Top earlier, where people have this, I think, fundamental desire to connect with things that are real. And, when you walk into that barn, you're in the barn.
Well, and it makes it more real. Otherwise, it could just be a movie set. It's just a facade, right? But then you go in and you see the nicks in the floor.
It's three-dimensional.
You see life having been lived in there at one point, and that's what's so interesting about it.
You're looking at the battlefield park, the battlefield from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so, it's very gratifying that so many people love that program, and I thank everybody that reached out to us. So we will be bringing that back on the May 11th. On May 25th, we're hosting a panel. It's an evening panel discussion on PTSD in the American Civil War. And we're really working with a lot of licensed battlefield guides, Rob Abbott, Rick Schrader, Tracy Bear, and a few others to make that happen. Because they come from military and medical backgrounds, and they've done this before. Yeah. I think they actually were on your.
We did a show about PTSD.
I stole that from you.
That's fine.
I just ripped it off from you because I thought it was so great.
I still get so many good emails from veterans about that episode. So,
well, you should come in and be part of it.
Oh, I would love to, but I don't know what I could add to the.
We'll talk.
Okay.
We'll talk offline.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful to
I would like to, since you stole the idea from me, Chris.
Like most of my things.
And not only that, but all the people I had on the show. Do you want Pastor Andy Hart? Did you get him?
I think he's actually coming to that, to be honest.
So it's my full cast.
Yeah. Besides you, I'm replacing you. I'll be playing the role of Matt Callery today.
All I did on that one, I remember Rob Abbott was very concerned about us coming off the right way. He didn't want us to come off as people trying to give advice or as any kind of professionals who could, comment on that. But we just wanted to, use the words of the soldiers to describe this so that guys today going through it could see that guys back then went through it. I think intellectually or academically, we all know they had to have.
Yeah.
But here they are describing it in their Victorian ways, or here's descriptions of someone else going through it. And, and I remember because of Rob's concern, that kind of scared me a little bit. And I was like, you know what, Rob, why don't you take the lead on this one? Because I'll just kind of sit there and just kind of help move it along. Yeah. But I think you being a Marine colonel, I think maybe you are more qualified to lead this charge, so to speak. And so, so that's what I did is I sat back and,
it's obviously an important topic. It's one that's not to be taken lightly.
No.
And as you note, it's one that is not new or novel to our day and age, but you can, and I don't want to attempt to diagnose people from the past, but I think there are a lot of commonalities between that experience during the American Civil War and today. And I'm very grateful to these guys for being willing to participate in it again.
Yeah.
And I would say continue the conversation that you so nobly started.
Thanks.
So we'll be doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
And on June, I believe it's June the 9th, we will be welcoming a historian by the name of Ronald C. White for a free public lecture. He recently published a book on Joshua Chamberlain.
Okay.
And so, in conjunction with, obviously the reopening of Little Round Top that'll be occurring around that time, we're very excited to welcome him. Mm-hmm. He will also be speaking at the Civil War Institute, I should note.
All right. That's it?
Well, we'll also be doing our programming, our field programming. So as we leave the winter lecture series behind, we head out on the battlefield. And so I would anticipate, battle walks and a variety of field programs.
So you say I would anticipate. Do you have a schedule yet, or at least a rough idea of when people can expect these? Not specific days.
We usually start up field programming in April. So April 1, I'd look for that.
Okay. So you don't have.
I'm playing my cards close to my chest.
You're holding them close to the vest. Okay, good. You don't want to
make sure I got my ducks in a row.
You know what you should.
I don't want you to be doing. Get back at me and start leading these battle walks.
Exactly. I might steal some of your walk ideas.
Don't do that.
No, I'm just kidding.
I usually steal your ideas.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm going to get Louis Trott to come do some hikes for us.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we go to the calls?
No.
Okay.
No, by all means.
All right. And then we'll do that now with Mike, who has been patiently waiting here. I have a talk-to-text screener here, but it doesn't always get what people are saying. I want to tell you, it says, this is what Mike supposedly said, and then we'll see what he actually wants to say. It says, Mike, I have a question about the installation of Camp, quote, may have changed. It's a fog Raffy of the park. So let's see what he actually said. Mike, you're on the air.
I know exactly what he's talking about.
I do too. Mike, hello.
Well, howdy, Matt. Howdy, Matt. Hello, Chris.
Hey there. How are you?
Okay. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know what that gibberish was just read off, but,
Don't worry
we
about it.
We got to do something about this AI stuff.
Yeah, I know, right? So what's up, Mike?
My question was, I've walked Pickett's Charge a number of times, different angles, and, used one or two of the guidebooks. I forget which one. But it did seem to be pretty accurate. Landscape seemed pretty much unchanged, because as the Confederate troops would have got down into some of those swales, see where they did have cover for a few moments. Mm-hmm. But I can't help but think that when that big army camp went in the beginning of the 20th century, they erected some wooden structures. I would think they would have probably bulldozed some of the tops of some of the ridges, and therefore that the landscape may have been significantly changed, but I don't know. I've always wondered about that and never got a satisfactory answer. But anyway, I'll hang up and listen to what you guys have.
Well, what exactly is the question? Did the landscape?
But the landscape changed. So first of all, thanks, Mike, for that question.
Yeah, you would think that the installation of Camp Colt changed the landscape of the fields of Pickett's Charge.
Sure, thank you. All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks for the question. Go ahead, Chris.
So yeah, you go out there today, and it's not difficult to in your mind to imagine Pickett's charge unfolding across that landscape. Most visitors, kudos to Mike for hiking the battlefield and reading up on it, because most visitors don't realize that at one point in time there is this U.S. military installation called Camp Colt that's really smack dab in the middle of the field, and they have a variety of structures that they erect, primarily, as it's wooden barracks. But there's an officer's swimming pool that's right near the angle, and there's some more permanent structures, obviously. Yeah. At one point in time, there's a rail line going up there, and so what I always tell visitors is that you can't build that kind of facility without altering the landscape. Now, sure. I would say these are not major alterations, but they certainly change the overall topography of that land. Yeah, because it involves grading, and it involves laying out of avenues and company streets and camp streets. So that there are changes in the overall topography. How significant they are, though, I think is you can still go out there and you can still understand the terrain that Pickett's men would have encountered. So those big swales that'll hide a division or hide a brigade, they're still there. You can hike that trail, and you can experience what they experienced. Right. When you leave the point of woods and you follow that kind of mowed path, and granted, you're kind of on the far left of what would have been Garnett's brigade. You go down that swale still, and you can see where there's enough concealment there. You can't see the Union position on Cemetery Ridge, and then you crest the rise. You're by the Gettysburg Road. All of a sudden, the Union line is right there. So that is still something that you can experience and see out on the battlefield. But when they created Camp Colt, they certainly changed some of those smaller topographical features that gave way to that military camp. And of course, it's a tank training ground that they're sure. There's images of them using the ramp of the Bliss barn, as this proving ground for these Renault tanks that. We don't do that today, obviously, but certainly they did in the 19-teens.
Well, and I guess for tanks, you wouldn't want it to necessarily be all flat. You would keep some of those swales in there anyway. Like you wouldn't obliterate it all.
Those swales that again provide real cover and concealment for Pickett's men. They're substantial. Yeah, significant undulations in the ground. They remain out there today.
Bob from Annapolis, you are on the air, sir.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. I just want to say thank you, Chris, for these updates, and thank you, Absolutely. Matt, for allowing him to give us these updates.
My pleasure.
Very, very helpful.
That's my job, sir.
There you go. My question was about Wolf's Hill and basically access to it, and if anything, I'm never really comfortable going there and trying to figure out how to get there, what the proper procedure is, and if there's any plans to make that easier or what over there. Because like I said, I'd love to get there, but I'm just not sure exactly what I need to do to get there.
You're talking about Neal Avenue or Lost Avenue? You want to go out there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Chris?
Well, to that point, so when we're talking about public access to Neal Avenue, one, I'd say if you ever have the chance to go up there, it's amazing up there.
It's cool.
It's one of the areas of the battlefield that when you go up there, it's very 19th century. Yeah, it's a time capsule.
It's untouched. Yeah,
it's a time capsule, and a lot of the credit to that is due to the man that owns most of the land around it, a gentleman by the name of Dean Schultz, who is incredibly gracious with his time and is always very willing to escort folks out there. Provided you contact him ahead. Yeah. So here's what I would say. So if you want to access Neal Avenue, the single best thing you can do is call the Museum and Visitor Center. And Dean has given us permission to distribute his phone number. Okay. And so make contact with him. He works. He's got his own life, so do it ahead of time. But he's usually very good about allowing you to park in his driveway, which is along the Baltimore Pike, right? And then to access the hill from that direction. There's an old right of way at the end of Clap Settle Road, which I would not encourage you to go that route. One, it's not maintained; it's abandoned. Two, it's surrounded by private property, and we want to be respectful of the folks that live up there. Now, someday, some future iteration, when perhaps we own a bit more of a bit more parcels around that area. I'd love for a trail system to be able to connect these kind of distant elements of the park into one cohesive.
That would be awesome.
Cohesive system. But that
what a dream
to be seen.
That would be something else.
I retire in 2042, so maybe by that point
we got some time.
I got a little bit of time. But yeah, I would contact Dean Schultz in the event you want to go out there.
Bob, what else were you going to say?
No, that's it. I just, like I said, I didn't know where to park. I didn't know, I don't want to go out there and have somebody chase me off their property.
No.
Right.
There are a lot of people that just go out there and try to whack their way up, and kudos to you for trying to do it the right way. It's much better for everybody else.
Oh, thank you.
I'll tell you.
You've been very helpful.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for the call. I went years ago when I first moved here, 2018. My friend Dustin and I had just taken that tour with Troy about but it wasn't even about park roads that are no longer there. It was just, that's where I learned it. And that's when I became obsessed. And then Dustin came down a couple of weeks later and I showed him, and we went to a couple of other ones, and we went into the visitor center, and I asked the ranger on duty, I said, so where are other hidden roads? Mm-hmm. And he goes, what are you talking, Lost Avenue? And I go, I'd never heard of it at that point. And I was like, no, but now I want to know. Yeah. So he gave us
You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Right, exactly. So now he gives us Dean's number, and we call Dean, and we leave a voicemail, and he calls us back, and he tells us where to come. And I thought he was going to just say, just go back up there. You can't miss it.
He gave you a tour.
No, he took us up there and spent 2.5 hours with us.
Yeah.
And we were like in nerd heaven.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's a sign that says the right flank of the Army of the Potomac up there, extreme right or whatever. I forget how they word it. But these monuments that I had never seen before. And my favorite monument is up there.
7th Main?
Yes.
That's everybody's favorite.
It's everybody's favorite. But it's like the coolest one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And so I just think it's amazing there. All right. Who is this here? Okay. Matt, or is this, I don't know, 614 is the number that the area code there. You're on the air. Oh, looks like you just hung up. Oh, no. But here we go. We got somebody in the queue here. I'm going to interrupt their screening. 585, you are on the air. I interrupted your screening. Go ahead. Hello. Hello. Yes, there you are.
Hi, it's Jean Hutchinson calling.
Hi, Jean. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm just calling with a question for Chris about the battle walks that they have every year over the anniversary.
Go for it. He's being very secretive about them, but go ahead.
Well, I just wondered if they had ever thought about sprinkling them through the rest of the summer, especially like into October when the tourists seem to descend upon Gettysburg and the weather is cooler. And I just wondered if they ever thought about doing that.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So we have them throughout the summer into the fall. Usually, it all depends on staffing, of course, how many people I can hire and how many rangers I can put out in the field. I'd love to get to a point where. Go ahead.
I know you have the history hikes and the first, second, third day of battle, but I really love the big long battle walks that you guys do over the anniversary.
So we do them over the summer still. Usually on the weekends we do them. But I hear what you're saying. You want more, and you want to extend them into the fall. And again, it's all dependent on staffing. But I'm very fortunate actually this year, in particular, that I got a very good crew of rangers, both permanent and my seasonal team.
Great,
coming back. Got a lot of good people.
Do you have the seasonal team? When do you pick the seasonal team? Is that this time of year?
We do hiring. Yeah, we do hiring now, and it all depends. How much hiring I do depends on how many vacancies I have. Because if you're a seasonal, you can, depending on how you've been hired, you have rehire rights, so you can keep coming back and back.
Oh, that's nice.
What's wonderful is when you get a good crew like we do now, and I've always been very fortunate with the folks on my team. With some really good people, and when they've had a few seasons under the belt, then they start to develop that real site-specific subject matter expertise. You can do more and more as a park.
Right,
you can do more battle walks. You can do more campfires. You can do all these great things that it's difficult to expect that of somebody who's just come from Acadia. Now they've stepped foot into Gettysburg, and it's a different ball game. A different park.
Yeah,
different ball game.
Gene, any other questions you have there?
No, just I'm so excited that he's going to do Doors Open Gettysburg again, because I think I was down there in 2016 for it, and it was so much fun. It was so amazing.
Yeah,
so
I'm looking forward to that as well.
That just made my day when he said that.
Good.
So thank you so much. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome, Jean. It's great to hear your voice.
Bye-bye now.
All right, bye-bye. She brought up a good point. Oh, yeah, October. Now, in the town, it seems that there are more visitors in October than July.
Yeah, it's true.
Is the park seeing that as well?
October is the busiest month of the year.
It is overtaken July.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, when I tell them that.
It's not even particularly close.
Really? No. When I tell a lot of people that, they don't believe me. They go, but when July was when the battle was. Nope. And I go, nobody cares.
No.
It's too hot.
It's
No, I'm not saying nobody cares, but you know what I mean. Well, I mean, I do say that, but that's not what I mean.
Well,
it's hot.
It was very hot, right? It's very hot. And, there was a point in time when July far and away was the busiest month of the year, but that's in the early 2000s, 1990s. And
we were a tougher lot back then.
I think visitors have changed.
Yes.
Honestly, visitors have changed. And,
absolutely.
October is very busy.
It's almost like we have two winters now, because July and August, after, say, Bike Week, off a cliff, and then it picks up in September. And then October, it's boom. It's
quite busy.
Really busy until about Christmas. And then it falls off a cliff again until March. St. Patrick's Day, it kind of picks up a little bit. And then April, bigger. And then,
Yeah, we noticed that same thing.
Yeah. It's weird. So we have two winters now in Gettysburg, which is all the more reason for you to come and visit during the summer and the winter. I mean, really, that's one of the beautiful things I think about.
We'll start doing another winter lecture series, but it's going to be in
the summer.
It'll be in August and September. Yeah.
Why not? In the air conditioning? Do it.
Gotta think about it.
I'm telling you, it's such. And for those of you who have not been to a winter lecture, and you're within an hour drive, and you got looking for something to do on a Saturday or a Sunday or both, you got to give one of the weekends a try. Just come on up. What I like about it, Chris, is it's well, there's a lot of things I like about it. One of them is that you really do a great job at picking interesting people to come and talk about an interesting topic, like the good presenters. Number one. Number two is there's a core group of people that are there every lecture, right? And I know this because I go and I record every lecture, and I've been doing it for like 3 or 4 years, and I see the same group of people all the time. And I may not talk to them, I may not know who they are, but it's nice to see the same faces.
It is, yeah.
I almost I feel like it's like a kind of like a winter camp, like a summer camp, but in the winter. It's
a nice community that's developed around it. I'm grateful for that.
Eric Houston, you are on the air, sir. Oh, actually, it might be good. Eric, you're on the air.
Well, good afternoon.
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chris, for coming on the show. Great show so far, at least what I could listen to other than when work interfered with my enjoyment. But I just wanted to two things. One, I wanted to thank you on behalf of my daughter. She's a student at college, and she said you were very gracious with your time, and she enjoyed I think you took them on. I can't remember where you took them, but you took some of the students on for a short tour or something. So
great.
I don't know if it was, I think maybe Little Round Top you went up there.
I took a class of them up to Little Round Top in October, I think. And that was great. Yeah.
Yep. So she very much enjoyed it. So just wanted to pass along her thanks for you on that. But a question for you, I guess, is if you had, and certainly understand resources are a major issue, but if resources weren't an issue, what is maybe a dream project or a project that you would really like to do that hasn't been done before?
Great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
that's a wonderful question. So I'm gonna go back to something we touched upon just briefly in our Lost Avenue discussion. If you go to Antietam National Battlefield, and I think this is a lot of credit to the team down there led by Keith Snyder, they have what I think is one of the best trail systems in any battlefield park.
Yeah.
It's well marked. Each trail has a purpose. They're thematic. And you can hike at Antietam from the visitor center to the North Woods down to Burnside's Bridge down to Snavely Ford. I mean, you can hike the whole battlefield, and you can cross pavement only a handful of times, and it takes you to all of these locations that are off the road.
Yeah.
So you get a sense of the soldier experience and the terrain. That trail system at Antietam is fantastic.
It is.
Before I retire in 2042.
Not that you're counting.
Not that, no. You gotta plan ahead.
I know.
Gotta save. Before I retire, I would love to have a trail system that is similar to what they've done at Antietam, but at Gettysburg. That
would be great.
So you can access things like Bushman Hill and South Cavalry Field and Neal Avenue in a way that is more than just being dependent on the avenue system and the very few formalized trails we have in the parks. I would love that. I would love that. That'd be my dream.
That would be so cool. It's hard. It's a little harder to do here because it's a different layout,
different animal
for sure. But I think it could be done.
It can be done. I know it can be done.
Yeah, I have a route from Wolf Hill all the way like down across Rock Creek, along Rock Creek until you get into like. I can't think of the name of the road, like Carmen Avenue and like that area there, and then they go up the.
I got a big map of the park that I Sharpie, a little Sharpie mark, and I draw, these trails that I'd love to have. I probably those look like no one can make any sense of it other than they. Something that only a lunatic would.
It's
would
like that meme
create.
of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with all the pictures and the yarn going from one. Yeah. Let's see, Eric. Anything else? Or did I already hang up on
No, I just that. Thank you very much, and that was a great idea. And I know I've become a much wider user of the National Park Service app, and as I travel for work, I try to hit different national parks, and being able to use that app.
Oh yeah,
and even a lot of places have interpretive trails like that you just open up your phone and follow trails around like that, and it would give a whole lot of. Now you can currently use it to do the driving tour, but I'm not sure. I guess I haven't really looked much, but I think that'd be a great addition to have those extra trails. So thank you for the time and the answering the question.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the call, Eric. You have yourself a great day. All right, Chris, I've taken up too much of your time already, and I appreciate it. I know you said that you didn't have all the time in the world, and so I must let you go now.
Wow, it's been a pleasure, Matt, and I want to thank you again for all the work you've done supporting the park and
my pleasure.
All the work that you've done here. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank all of you for watching. Thank you for calling in, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll talk to you in a couple months. We'll have Chris back, and we'll see what's going on with all that other stuff. We'll have him on before the summer so that you can maybe then he'll tell us what kind of battle walks and other outdoor activities.
We'll do it live from the summit of Little Round Top, right?
Well, yeah, we'll do one of those too. Then we'd better do one of those. That'd be awesome. Otherwise, that's it, folks. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you next time. Okay, we are done.
Thank you, Mr. Gallery.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you.